Good afternoon. It's Friday, the 17th of October, 2025, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Mike Robinson. Joining me, my co-host today, Patrick Henningsen. Welcome to the programme, Patrick.
Great to be with you, Mike.
And we have journalist Mark Anderson joining us by video link today. Well, actually not from the United States this week, but in fact in the other UK Column studio at the moment. So we'll see him in a minute. So now looking later in the programme, we're going to be looking at censorship, of course, mRNA, the latest advice from MI5, the NATO defence ministers meeting, and of course Gaza. But we're going to begin today, Patrick, with anti-Semitism in universities. What's going on there?
Well, this is an incredible story, and we're pleased to be joined by Basil Valentine, who's going to be talking about this next story with us. We'll connect him in a moment. But for now, let's just bring this up on screen. This is our lead story today. A pro-Israel group gets $1 million in UK government funding to, quote, identify anti-Semitism. What in earth is going on here? And now we can see this story is going to be very controversial. The Union of Jewish Students will offer some 600 training sessions to university staff over the coming weeks to help them, quote, identify harassment and hate and facilitate open and respectful debate, says the Department for Education in their latest press release. And it goes on. The Department for Education warns that universities could face action if they do not protect Jewish students from harassment. And they're referring to the pro-Palestinian demonstrations, Mike, which have been going on not just around this country, but Europe and the world. And it goes on to say most British universities refer to the IHRA's definition of anti-Semitism, which free speech defenders say attempts to impose political censorship on valid criticisms of Israel, something we've talked a lot about on this program previously here. And Prime Minister Keir Starmer said the planned student protests were, quote, un-British and lacked respect for others. So protesting a genocide apparently is un-British, according to the PM. And officials in the department also say they should ban protests that are intrusive and disruptive. And here is one of the most important parts of this, and we'll talk to our guest in a moment. The funding recipient, the Union of Jewish Students, has links to the World Zionist Organization, which funds illegal settlements in the occupied West Bank and East Jerusalem. So this story goes a lot deeper. Let's connect our guest, Basil Valentine. He is a journalist and broadcaster based in the UK. Basil, welcome to the program. And tell us about this story, Basil. This is hugely controversial. I just get the feeling, Basil, that what's happening on the other side of the Atlantic seems to be now happening on this side of the Atlantic. But welcome to the program.
Great to be with you, Patrick. Yes, this was announced by the woman who would be deputy leader of the Labour Party, Bridget Phillipson, speaking to Laura Kuenssberg on her programme on Sunday. Kuenssberg reminded Phillipson that she had declared a national emergency of what? Anti-Semitism, of course, on university campuses back in May. And Kuenssberg teed Phillipson up by asking, well, what now are you going to do about it? Whereupon Phillipson unveiled this huge funding package for an organization, the Union of Jewish Students, which boasts of its ties with the Israeli government. In fact, there's a clip of Nina Friedman of the Union of Jewish Students talking to Isaac Herzog and boasting of the fact that there are former members of the Union of Jewish Students in prominent positions in the Israeli government. So you can't really get a cigarette paper between the Union of Jewish Students and the regime in Tel Aviv. Kuenssberg then went on to quote the charity Stand With Us, another virulently pro-Israel advocacy group, who made the entirely unsubstantiated claim that anti-Israel students at one unnamed British university had compiled a list of Jewish students for harassment. Now, there's no evidence presented by Kuenssberg or Stand With Us to back this claim up. No evidence, therefore, of its veracity or otherwise. But the Manchester synagogue attack and, to a large extent, the ceasefire are increasingly being used by the authorities as a reason to say, right, you've had your protests over genocide. That's enough now. Time to shut up again or face the consequences. The Office for Students, which I didn't know is the regulatory body for academic institutions in the UK, the director of free speech, Arif Ahmed, has said that there would be sanctions for universities in Britain if they failed to toe the line, basically. And it remains to be seen the extent to which that means clamping down on legitimate protest against genocide. So this is developing all the time. We don't know what's in this so-called anti-Semitism training being provided by the Union of Jewish Students. And this goes with another 2 million being announced for Holocaust education in secondary schools. That, of course, refers only to the events of the Second World War, not the Gaza Holocaust.
Is using coercive methods to intimidate higher education institutions in order to clamp down on student protests, to clamp down on free speech, or what they call anti-Semitism on campuses, i.e. protesting a genocide in Gaza, withholding federal funding. Do you see the same kind of coercive measures coming into play here?
Yeah, exactly. It's straight out of the Trump playbook. And Koonsberg on Sunday morning, and indeed the entire British government, establishment, media, and the rest, are determined to keep reinforcing the entirely mendacious narrative that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. This loops back in, of course, to Professor David Miller's cases now. And Nina Friedman, the individual I just said, was boasting to Isaac Herzog about Union of Jewish Students alumni being in prominent positions in Israel. So if you can claim that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, then of course you can clamp down on all sorts of things. And that's why it's so important that David Miller wins against the appeal. And that anti-Zionism becomes enshrined in UK law by precedent as a belief worthy of respect in a democratic society, because there's no doubt Israel's been badly rattled by the breadth and depth and strength and numbers of people showing solidarity for the slaughtered and mutilated and starved of Gaza. And so they will keep up. They are absolutely relentless. They will keep up their attempts to, intimidate, silence, clamp down on protest wherever possible, using front groups like Stand With Us and the Union of Jewish Students.
And the Times just ran this story, I think it was in today's paper, Basil. Maybe you could tell us a bit more about this. The headline is Jewish Students Call for Action After Pro-Palestinian Protests. What exactly is happening here?
Well, the headline says it all, really. The headline by the Times there, again, deliberately conflates pro-Palestinian protests with intimidation of Jewish students. First of all, that obviously is in itself anti-Semitic because it ignores the increasing number of anti-Zionist Jewish students. This is an absolutely key point, particularly among young people. Of course, support for the genocide is crumbling, it's cratering. So they're trying to shore it up by conflating any form of pro-Palestinian solidarity with anti-Semitism. Melanie Phillips published an article in the Times, I believe, or it might have been the Jewish Chronicle a few months ago, saying any form of Palestinian solidarity is anti-Semitism. Now, that's the sort of extremist maximalist line that you get from ultra-Zionists like her. But that's the tone being taken in that headline, is that, pro-Palestine protests are somehow intimidatory towards Jewish students. Inherently so. There was an article on the BBC website which casually said, at these protests, students could be heard shouting "Free Palestine," as if that was, somehow in itself an anti-Semitic chant. Now, of course, on Friday, we've got an important watershed when the result of the government's appeal against the decision by the High Court to grant a judicial review into the prescription of Palestine action will be heard. We'll know whether or not the judicial review will indeed proceed, because one of the things that the Office for Students has said is that they may withhold funding, withhold student grants, and generally sanction universities if there appears to be support among students for prescribed organizations. And by that, of course, they mean Palestine Action. So that's an absolutely crucial decision. And should the High Court allow the judicial review to go ahead, then the scholars are saying there's every chance the ban on Palestine Action will be overturned. That will obviously represent a major defeat for the Israel lobby and cause endless wailing and gnashing of teeth.
Yeah, and clearly that is weaponizing the issue in order to quell free speech of students. But we'll bring that headline back up on screen from the Times. What's more concerning here, even, Basil, is if it's not bad enough, university chiefs, in the subtext here, university chiefs have been urged to expel students after these societies shared posts on Instagram of Hamas fighters during October 7th. So expelling students for social media posts about things that are happening in the news, I find this to be a very slippery slope. Go ahead.
Well, absolutely. It's always a full court press from the Israel lobby. They never give an inch. They're determined to harass, dox people to the maximum extent. I saw a headline this morning, I haven't had time to research it, saying that Palestine activists are being targeted to have their bank accounts closed as well. So we shouldn't be surprised by this at all. One would hope that it could go to court should any student be expelled for sharing a meme or a post, whether or not they endorse the actions of the people in the picture or whoever they may be. I've no idea, but obviously it's an extremely perverse, indeed inverted morality, where you can cheer on the perpetrators of genocide, but you're not allowed to speak out against it.
I mean, Mike, the issue of academic freedom is one thing, and David Miller has brought that issue to the fore with his case. But now we're getting also using the same issue is being applied to students in order to sort of police what can be said, what can't be said. I don't think this kind of goes against all of the principles of the UK higher education, which has always been a world leader.
Yeah, but I think this goes beyond just higher education. I mean, we look at what's happened in the United States with particularly foreign students in the United States being targeted, being expelled from the country again. We have the migrant issue in the UK as well, and so if one of the targets of this, which it seems to be, is student protest, then undoubtedly we're going to see quite a bit. Are we going to see sort of ICE style people being scooped up off the streets, ICE style, like we're seeing in the United States? And my other question would be, what is the response of the universities going to be? Because of course they're already complaining bitterly about reductions in income as a result of fewer foreign students coming in and the restrictions on foreign students that are being talked about. So if this starts to affect the bottom financial line, are the universities actually going to run with this? I mean, obviously, there's massive pressure on them to do so. And in the case of David Miller, we see that they're very enthusiastic to do so in some respects. But if it actually starts hitting their bottom line, what happens then?
Oh, they're already under pressure for wanting to ban, Chinese foreign students, which comprise a very large block of high tuition paying overseas students that have help to subsidize UK higher education in a certain way. But Basil, just we have 1 minute left. It's ironic that this is happening, and you're having record numbers of people on the streets in London. The last pro-Palestinian march this past weekend, 600,000 people took to the streets in the British capital. The irony of that is incredible. They're going in two different directions, the public and the authorities on this. Your final thoughts?
Well, that's been the case for a long time. I mean, if you poll the whole world, you'll find that it's increasingly anti-Zionist. Of course it is, because they've been perpetrating genocide. But after the so-called ceasefire, which Israel is managing to regularly breach, of course, so far, a couple of dozen Palestinians were killed yesterday, the narrative and the optics are, well, they're attempting to change them, basically say, look, Trump, Netanyahu, Sharm el-Sheikh, it's all wonderful. So now there's no reason to protest against what's happening in Gaza. It's all over. Well, it isn't all over. Innumerable war crimes and crimes against humanity have been committed, and supporters of those crimes are still populating government, House of Commons, and everything else. We've got a long, long way to go to see not just peace in the Middle East, but justice as well, and the perpetrators of genocide brought to justice. So people, I have no doubt, will and should carry on demonstrating until that is the case.
Ladies and gentlemen, Basil Valentine, thank you so much for joining us on the UK Column News this week. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And just a final thought here. This incredible piece by Jonathan Cook, who is just an outstanding journalist on this issue. We'll bring this up on screen. And in the headline says it all, Mike. Israel is the excuse to snatch away freedoms we once took for granted. We're talking about freedom of speech, freedom of assembly. This issue, or this alliance with Israel, is being used. It's being instrumentalized on both sides of the Atlantic to reduce basic rights. And Jonathan Cook, this is just a beautifully written piece. I encourage people, we'll include the link in the show notes so people can read this. Find this article, read it, and share it with your friends. It's so concise, the way Cook has laid out this really disturbing trend.
Thank you, Patrick, and thank you, Basil. Now, let's move on then to online safety-related issues. Now, a lot of the furore in the EU over the last period of time has been around chat control. Well, what is that? Well, it's the idea that the platforms will be required to assess the types of content that are being uploaded to the social media platforms and censor the content before it ever reaches the social media platform. So anyway, the good news is, though, that the EU's chat control legislation seems to have, at least for the moment, hit the buffers. Now, as I say, for those that don't know, this is the proposed legislation, which is being sold to the public as a mechanism for controlling the uploading of child sexual abuse material to internet platforms. And as I say, it would require platforms to scan content as it's being uploaded. It's a deeply unpopular idea because no one actually is stupid enough to believe that child sexual abuse material is where it would stop. And there is a certain recognition that CSAM is now being used as the sort of poster child for general censorship. So the EU Justice and Home Affairs Council was supposed to vote on Tuesday this week. And to quote them, they said the CSAM proposal is no longer on the agenda of the meeting for the Ministers of Justice and Home Affairs, which will take place on Monday and Tuesday. This is a retrospective statement. And the Council's cancellation was probably because of opposition, mainly coming from Germany. Now, if Germany had supported the proposal, the regulation would advance the final, what are called trilogue negotiations between the European Council, the European Parliament, and the European Commission. The Netherlands and Poland were among the states that opposed chat control, France and Ireland amongst the countries that back it. And the EU Home Affairs spokesperson said that the Danish presidency is likely to reintroduce the proposal towards the end of the year. So as I say, it's hit the buffers for now, but not forever. And on Friday then, that's Friday last week, ministers from 27 European countries, led by the Danish presidency, signed a declaration. Here it is, the Jutland Declaration, Shaping a Safe Online World for Minors. and it said that legislation must be effectively implemented to ensure child online safety. We need digital bouncers, said Caroline Stage, who's the Danish Digital Affairs Minister, digital bouncers to ensure that the internet is safe place to be and that children are not granted access when they're not old enough. It's crucial that we stand strong together in Europe if we want to make a real difference. Now, I've made the word we bold on that graphic because the question is, who is the we that she's talking about? Because she's not talking about we the people. She's talking about we the bureaucrats, and we need to stand together. And she's talking about the other member states and the other leaders of member states that maybe aren't quite so on the same page with this. So then in the meantime, here in the UK, Ofcom has announced the rollout of what they're describing as perpetual hash matching technology. This is what they describe as a powerful automated tool that can detect and swiftly move CSAM material before it spreads further. Of course, this is effectively our equivalent of the chat control legislation in the EU. And they were particularly talking about file sharing services. This is, they say, continuing the rollout of technology which scans content as it's being uploaded to platforms. So exactly the same as the EU. And the two services that they were speaking about in their press release have agreed to roll this out because they were deemed to have serious compliance issues and they were being threatened by Ofcom. But because they did what they were told, like good little children themselves, no further actions being taken at this time. But the threat hangs over their heads, of course. Many more of these types of organizations have chosen to withdraw from the UK instead of complying with Ofcom. Here's an example of a file sharing application which is no longer available in the UK. But the issue here is that some services that had taken this action were including although that particular page that you saw on screen there didn't have any information about VPNs, others did. And Ofcom said that it's clear that services who choose to block access by people in the UK must not encourage or promote ways to avoid these restrictions. So if they attempt to tell people, just install a VPN, that would be considered a contravention, and then they would Ofcom would be attempting to fine them or something like that. And I mean, what could they possibly be doing here? Well, here's an example. 4chan has not responded to Ofcom's request for a copy of its illegal harms risk assessment. That's 4chan's illegal harms risk assessment, nor a second request from Ofcom relating to its qualifying worldwide revenue. So Ofcom has fined 4chan £20,000 plus a daily penalty of £100 per day. And that began on Wednesday of this week. And that'll run for either 60 days or until 4chan provides them with the information, whichever is sooner. I'm sure 4chan is really panicking, Patrick.
Well, that's beside the point here, but the whole point of this is it's criminal activity. This material. There's laws on the books, right?
Right, precisely. Yes,
and so that means you have to take away all of the rights of the entire population.
Of course you do,
because of a few criminals who are already subject to criminal laws and prosecution anyway.
Yes.
So that would mean if a few kids got a hold of alcohol, somehow we have to ban alcohol throughout society.
Yes.
Or if kids got a hold of cigarettes, we must ban cigarettes across the whole of society. Well, it's the same mentality.
Principle. It is, absolutely. Then, if you remember back to the beginning of this year, the UK regime imposed an order on Apple to cause Apple to provide a backdoor to the strong encryption of iCloud services in the UK. And that would have meant in practice that Apple would have to remove these protections globally. Apple fought the issue at the time and won. Now, the UK regime is trying again. So if we just put that back on screen, this is the latest from Apple because they've had to bring back this page, which is telling us that they can no longer offer advanced data protection in the United Kingdom to new users. Now, it is only for new users. So anybody that has been operating this already can continue to operate it in the meantime. But Apple has not said that that is guaranteed forever. Because this is an ongoing legal process. And Apple's basically saying, that they're attempting to provide what they describe as the highest level of security for personal data and so on. And they're hopeful that they're going to be able to do that again in the future. So I just wanted to very briefly remind everybody where this is coming from. This is the Investigatory Powers Amendment Act 2024. And though this is an act of Parliament, it's been going for, as you can see, for about a year or so. And let's just remind ourselves what this means. So the government decided to reduce already weak protections against security services using our data illegally. It has removed a reasonable expectation of privacy. It has not explained why a reduction of privacy is necessary rather than convenient. It potentially permits bulk data collection of facial images and social media data. And of course, this feeds into the whole digital ID thing. It absolutely permits bulk collection of internet connection data. It's been doing that for a long time, and expands the range of politicians who can authorize surveillance of other politicians. But here's where it gets interesting. It requires tech companies to inform government of any plans to strengthen security or privacy features in their software, and it permits government vetoing any such security or privacy features. And it enables the Secretary of State to require tech companies to provide services or facilities for the purposes of facilitating or assisting an intelligence service to carry out its functions. In other words, backdoors to any form of encryption. Finally, it prevents tech companies from disclosing such services or facilities to anyone without permission of the Secretary of State. So, this is the situation that we are in as a result of the latest investigatory powers legislation.
Fascism.
Absolute fascism.
100%. So there it is.
There it is. Okay, let's move on. I want to say thank you very much to everybody that's supporting the UK column. We do need your ongoing support. And of course, if you have a look at the front page of the UK column website, there is a ton of material there. Do use the search functionality top right. But also please do consider using the click here button to support us. Various options for doing that. You can make a donation, you can join as a member, and so on. You can pick something up from the UK column shop, but please share any UK column material you're interested in, because that's how we get round this censorship regime that we've just been discussing. A final reminder that tomorrow, Saturday the 18th, is our event in York. Some fantastic speakers at that. The live stream will be available for anybody that wants to pick up a ticket for that. It's 20 quid or 18 quid if you're a UK column member. Please do consider that, and we're looking forward to everybody being on the live stream tomorrow that can possibly do so. And tonight at 7 p.m, Charles is back, but Jerm is back, so the weekly banter is back, and we'll be on at 7 p.m. with Jerm. And yesterday's discussion with Professor Ian Brighthope, Diet is the Best Medicine, is on the UK column website now. And also Charles' discussion with Morgan Lorette. This is the second conversation that Charles has had with Morgan Lorette on a world full of mercenaries. This is looking at private military contractors around the world. This is also on the UK column website now, so please do have a look at that if you haven't seen it yet. And then Patrick, we just got to mention that although the Digital ID March is taking place tomorrow, the Trafalgar Square event isn't. Is that what's going on?
There will be small speaking groups and stages, and there will be people speaking in different places. But a meeting at Marble Arch at 1 p.m. I think. So that's where it starts. Marble Arch at 1 p.m. and then go with the crowd, and probably is going to end up in Trafalgar Square.
Yes.
And there'll be things happening there, but it'll be slightly different format than what maybe people were expecting previously. But do attend. There's going to be a lot of people going.
Okay, let's welcome Mark to the program. Mark from Studio 2, welcome to the program. And what's been going on with mRNA technology?
Well, first I'll say the wind stole my hat. So if you don't recognize me, yes, it's still me. Anyway, getting this first slide up there, it is a report in the immediate aftermath, something I covered virtually, of an international press conference. It was actually recorded October 9, but broadcast throughout social media and video platforms as of October 12. And it was called The World Journey of Truth. And they're calling for a total mRNA vaccine moratorium. There were 30 plus speakers from 20 countries there. They each had 2 or 3 minutes where they spoke their truth, spoke their piece about why they think an mRNA moratorium is necessary. This next slide gives some summation of this. These 30 plus experts in medicine, life sciences, law, psychology, economics. There were philosophy people there too. They spoke on behalf of over 2,000 scientists and doctors and nearly 10,000 signatories who are jointly warning of the risks of mRNA technology and calling for this immediate moratorium. And I'll make a quick footnote. The moratorium is on the production and the use of the mRNA jabs, not just the usage. A very important point. And real quickly, I'll do a call out to Graham, a guy I met on the way here. He's from Reading. And there's this exercise Pegasus, a dress rehearsal for another pandemic going on in the UK right now as we speak. But I'm seeing no outward signs of it. And when I talked to Graham, he wasn't aware of any outward signs of it either. But a shout out to Graham and a guy named Bruce and his wife from Somerset. I met them on the way. I told them about UK Column. Anyway, this next slide just gives some of the speakers who were at this presentation, this press conference. Professor Paul Cullen, a lab physician from Ireland. We had Professor Robin Colford, a nutritional environmental medicine person from Australia. The well-known Texas cardiologist from the United States, Dr. Peter McCullough, and professors and technicians and doctors from Japan, Thailand, Estonia, Austria, and many other places. A very diverse group in terms of what they talked about, their backgrounds, and where they're from. And we'll move on from there. Some other very important matters to share. There's a website that was associated with this conference, and this next slide talks about one of many cases where the mRNA jabs have been associated with clear evidence that they were the cause of illness and death. This is a case report. It dates back to the 1st of October of 2022, and it comes from the National Library of Medicine, which is an adjunct of the National Institutes of Health in the United States. And the report is about a 76-year-old man, and he had Parkinson's disease. He's over 76. He passed away, and yet they were able to determine, according to this government-related report, they were able to determine that the mRNA jab was in fact, by all indications, the cause of his death, even though he had Parkinson's, his age, comorbidities, things like that. But anyway, there's another slide there that we seem to have skipped over. I had a part I wanted to emphasize on that last slide with the white background. The bottom part of this, where I put in the red emphasis, it talks about how the presence of spike proteins must be ascribed to vaccination rather than to viral infection. The findings corroborate previous reports of encephalitis and myocarditis caused by gene-based COVID-19 vaccines. This is the basic finding where they determined that the gentleman, 76-year-old with Parkinson's disease, again, by all indications, passed away precisely due to the mRNA jab. Now, the media propaganda, of course, amid the WHO's work on the pandemic treaty, which is chugging along. I'll talk about the schedule to that. We'll revisit the schedule to that in a moment. But as we think about Exercise Pegasus going on, the pandemic dress rehearsal right here in the UK, although it's not visible, it's not outwardly visible, it's going on right now. You think about the WHO trying to actually ratify this treaty, the pandemic treaty. Meanwhile, the media is putting out this unequivocal, absolutist kind of message, guys, where there can be no dissent. They relabel dissent as mixed messaging. And then they basically talk as if, in this case, pregnant women and their fetus are absolutely safe. No qualification, no equivocation. They can all get the mRNA jab, a pregnant woman who's carrying a baby, without any harm to the baby or the mother. And this New York Times video that we're about to show is emblematic of this absolutism that the media is putting out there, as if there can be no room for doubt, as if there can be no possibility of danger. Let's go ahead and watch this video.
The science is clear. The COVID vaccines are safe for pregnant women. But public health messaging around the vaccines has been muddled since Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announced that the CDC would no longer recommend them during pregnancy. My colleague and I spoke to both patients and doctors, and they told us the same thing. The changing federal guidance has created a great deal of confusion, both for pregnant women and for the pharmacists who administer the majority of COVID vaccines. In fact, a survey released this week found that only 42% of respondents believed it was safe to get an mRNA vaccine during pregnancy. So here's what you need to know about why the COVID vaccine is safe and effective during pregnancy. If you're pregnant, COVID is dangerous for both you and your fetus, even if you were perfectly healthy before. COVID is more dangerous during pregnancy for a number of reasons. First, pregnancy suppresses the immune system, so your body doesn't treat the fetus as a threat. That means you're more vulnerable to infections in general. Respiratory infections in particular are more dangerous because as the uterus swells, it compresses the diaphragm, making it harder to take deep breaths. The effects of a COVID infection can linger for the entire pregnancy. They can even affect the development of the placenta, hurting the fetus. Vaccines reduce these risks. Getting vaccinated also helps protect your baby. Newborns can't be vaccinated against COVID themselves until they're at least 6 months old, so maternal antibodies are the only way to protect them. That's important because the virus is especially dangerous for infants. In fact, the youngest children have a higher risk of hospitalization from COVID than any other group aside from adults over 75. At this point, we have years of data showing that the COVID vaccines are safe, including for pregnant women, and that the risks of COVID far outweigh any risks of the shots. So we know that vaccination is both effective and safe for pregnant women. That doesn't mean actually getting the vaccine is easy. Gynecologists often don't offer COVID vaccines in their offices,
So there we have it. There's that video where the unequivocal message is that women and their fetuses are absolutely free of any possible harm from the COVID jabs. And there was a lot of talk at that conference about the risk-benefit ratio and that there's been no reliable independent research to prove that risk-benefit ratio is in a favorable way. Therefore, that's one of many reasons that the presenters at that press conference are calling very loudly for the mRNA moratorium. This is a quick item that I did report last time, but I had some technical problems, and this was just given honorable mention on the extra last week. This is exclusive breaking news. Let's show this. An Alliance of Indigenous Nations International Tribunal, amid the other calls for an mRNA moratorium, they're calling mRNA nanoparticle injections biological and technological weapons of mass destruction in their view. And they base that on U.S. law, as this slide indicates, but also on Canadian and international law, saying that the mRNA nanoparticle injections, quote, meet the criteria of biological weapons and weapons of mass destruction. I've got just a couple more things to share here. And this is James Roguski, the noted watchdog of the pandemic treaty and all things related to mRNA. He's calling for revoking the biologics licenses for the mRNA injections from Pfizer and Moderna. And also he's calling for the mRNA moratorium. There's his contact. You can go to jamesroguski.substack.com, and he encourages people to text him in the U.S. in Los Angeles at 310. I didn't get that number there, but the number is posted for those that want to review the slides. You can text or call Mr. Roguski. Anyway, this last slide is the Intergovernmental Working Group agenda. This group took over for the Intergovernmental Negotiating Body to finish the treaty. And this shows their schedule all the way through next May, when the 79th World Health Assembly will happen in Switzerland. And they have not actually approved that pandemic treaty yet. They'll call it adopted, but they have not certified it or actually brought it into force. So a lot of times they're trying to misrepresent the status of that treaty. Very important to keep in mind. But back over to you guys. There'll be, of course, much more as this heats up late this year, early next year.
Certainly heating up, isn't it?
Yes, it certainly is.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark. Okay, Patrick, let's move back to international affairs and Israel.
Sure. Well, briefly, the big question is the ceasefire holding? Is the ceasefire holding? So we're asking ceasefire. What ceasefire? And as it turns out, the victory laps, during the victory laps by Trump, Netanyahu, all of the sort of posturing and backslapping in the Knesset in Tel Aviv. And what do we find? The ceasefire has been broken. As we said, as we predicted here, Israel warns it will resume military operations in Gaza if Hamas violates truce. Well, that was the threat by the Israelis. But what's actually happened? Well, that's happened. Israel kills 9 Palestinians in Gaza despite ceasefire. That just happened. This is just reported off the wires a few days ago. So they've already, and this isn't the only story we're showing here. So Israel has clearly violated the ceasefire. So is this mostly a ceasefire? Is this like mostly peaceful protests? Is now mostly a ceasefire by Israel? They can kill and do whatever they want, and nobody is going to restrain them. And that's the number one problem. This is why we said we didn't think that this was going to last, because Israel's record on ceasefires is
appalling.
It's 0% success rate. They have broken every single agreement. This has been documented by academics like Dr. Zachary Foster, who I encourage people to follow on X. We'll try to put Zach's X account in the show notes, but it is very well documented, Mike. 0% success rate. They violated everything, and they're doing it again.
And of course, they're getting the support from Trump to do this because, as we were talking about on Wednesday's program, the suggestion was unless they provide all the bodies of the dead hostages, which they can't possibly do because the place has been turned to rubble.
The ones that Israel killed themselves.
Yes.
They bombed their own hostages. Yeah.
And of course, they've got to disarm or else, and so on. So they put a load of criteria on the ceasefire continuing, which are in some cases impossible.
Well, Trump's already basically foreshadows, he's already pre-blaming Hamas if the ceasefire breaks. So no matter what happens, they're going to then blame Hamas. This is the Israeli negotiation tactic going back for the last 40 years.
Right.
So nothing new, unfortunately.
New. Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to the NATO defense ministers meeting. Now, this was taking place yesterday, the day before, on Thursday, and a recent series of mysterious drone incursions and airspace violations by Russian warplanes. Well, that was the key narrative of the NATO summit, the NATO Defense Minister Conference. It's important, as we'll come on to later, this whole issue of drone and airspace incursions. Everything was heavily choreographed, as you can see on screen at the moment. The arrivals, there was a family photo opportunity, of course, all the handshakes, the warm words. There's Hexeth on screen at the moment and so on. And the key thing is that what they're saying basically is that now that Trump has won the Gaza war, it seems to be more or less how they're putting it. The focus is back on Ukraine, or in fact, rather, the focus is back on Putin. But don't worry, because
NATO is NATO is a defensive alliance. We will remain a defensive alliance, but make no mistake, this defensive alliance is ready and willing to do what it takes to keep our 1 billion people safe and our territory secure. Their security is linked with ours. This is not just words, but is reflected in the support we give to Ukraine.
That's really key what he said, Mike.
Yes.
Mark, and sorry for the technical glitch there, is Mark Rutte has an effect on our video,
on everybody. I mean,
video capturing, cause everything to go haywire.
Yeah.
He's saying our security is linked to Ukraine's security. But the other side of that equation is as valid as Russia's security is linked to Ukraine.
Yes.
And what happens in Ukraine. And that's the part of the equation that doesn't get spoken about on this side of the Iron Curtain, or on the iron side of the Iron Curtain. But go ahead.
Yes, indeed. Now, later on, there were defense conferences, and John Healey had this to say.
When I argue that a secure Europe requires a strong sovereign Ukraine, what Ukraine is teaching us in the way that we can see the rapid evolution of the nature of warfare, the leading edge innovation that Ukraine and battlefield techniques, for some time we have been able to learn from Ukraine. And Ukraine is increasingly recognized and understood to play a part in the training of other NATO nations' forces and in recent moves to respond to incursions into NATO airspace. Ukraine has stepped up, responded in practice, and I think is helping to demonstrate more clearly to more people how the Ukraine is fighting for its future, but the unique leading combat experience that it now has means that it can already and will in the future make a huge contribution to the security of Europe more generally.
So a strong sovereign Ukraine controlled by Britain, the United States, and the EU, is that how that works?
With the CIA running the SBU, which the American government's paying Ukrainian pensions. And what about elections? Sovereignty? How about elections? Are they having elections in Ukraine? I guess not. It's a dictatorship run by foreign powers, subsidized by the US, Europe, and the UK.
And that's foreign powers, as he's just admitted, are using the scenario to develop strategies for fighting Russia in the future, because they're watching everything that Russia does, obviously, in the course of this conflict, and trying to use that to build up some kind of battlefield database here.
Sovereignty is a big donut in Ukraine right now.
100%.
Unfortunately. More on John Healey. This is from another session from the recent confab, but watch this and listen carefully.
And Secretary Hegseth, I want to praise President Trump's essential leadership in securing that ceasefire in Gaza. That was peace secured through strength. And today, as we shift our focus back to the war in Ukraine, your presence here reminds us of President Trump's commitment also to secure peace in Ukraine. But until peace comes, Ukrainians, military and civilians alike, continue to fight with huge courage. Our determination must match their defiance. Our support must match Putin's escalation. And our role as members of this UDCG is to guarantee Ukraine's strength.
Now, the first thing I picked up there is the sycophancy of all of the European leaders, and Healey now pandering to Trump, Donald Trump's peace to strength. Is Trump the president of Britain? It seems like it. There's no independent foreign policy or thought in the British defense establishment there. So the sycophancy is something to note. The other thing is he's talking about defiance. Ukrainians' defiance. Our commitment must match Ukraine's defiance. Where's the defiance happening in Ukraine, Mike? It seems to me if you have to hogtie young men off the streets and bundle them into the back of the vans to conscript them and then throw them into the trenches on the front line with the average life expectancy of somewhere between 24 and 48 hours, the real defiance in Ukraine is coming from the Ukrainian people against the Zelensky autocracy that is prosecuting a proxy war on behalf of NATO. That's the defiance in Ukraine. If you look at the polling, the majority of Ukrainians want this over, but the political class and those getting funded by this, making money out of it, want to promulgate this conflict. So the Orwellian language is unbelievable. And the last one, until peace comes. Mm-hmm. Until peace comes. In other words, there's going to be war until peace comes. So they're going to make no effort to have any dialogue, no diplomacy, no negotiations, no political settlements. And we're just going to have war until peace comes. This is so Orwellian.
Yes. What's Trump been up to then?
What's Trump been up to? So let's talk about escalation. Here is Donald Trump talking about sending Tomahawk missiles, potentially nuclear-armed Tomahawk missiles, to Ukraine. Listen to this.
Do they want to have Tomahawks going in their direction? I don't think so. I think I might speak to Russia about that, in all fairness. I told that to President Zelensky because Tomahawks are a new step of aggression. Right? You understand that very well.
Are you saying that you will speak to Putin first about Tomahawks?
I might talk to him. I might say, look, if this war's not going to get settled, I'm going to send them Tomahawks. I may say that. The Tomahawk is an incredible weapon, very offensive weapon. And honestly, Russia does not need that. They don't need that. Yeah, I might tell them that if the war is not settled, that we may very well do it. We may not, but we may do it. I think it's appropriate to bring up. Yeah.
My first question to you there is, he's saying we might tell Russia this. Has he not just told Russia that by making a statement in front of TV cameras? I mean,
it's so vaudevillian at this point.
Yeah.
But what he's saying is serious. He's saying that we're going to escalate, and that's how we're going to negotiate with the Russians, is through threats and military escalations. And
but let me just ask you one more question. Is the Tomahawk not just the latest equivalent, similar to the F-16? It's a weapon that the Ukrainians can't use.
Yeah.
So where does that leave us? Is it just nonsense again?
Spot on. It's exactly like the F-16. You remember all the furor of, once Zelensky gets those F-16s, then everything's going to change. Then it was once he gets the ATACMS, and it's once he gets the Storm Shadows, and it's so on and so forth. So the only danger here is Russia's made some very strong statements about U.S. involvement in deploying Tomahawks, especially on Ukrainian soil, and we'll get to that in a moment. But in the meantime, let's look at this story here. So escalation is definitely the policy now. Ukraine, Russia latest. U.S. tells NATO to boost firepower ahead of Trump-Zelensky meeting here. This is from The Independent. And I'll give a shout out to Sam Kiley here, this commentator for The Independent. I was very impressed with the analysis. Much more even-handed than we've seen previously. So I'm credit where credit's due. I was very impressed with that. So now Pete Hegseth is basically the alpha dog of the Trump administration. He changed to the Department of War now, no longer the Department of Defense, now it's the Department of War. And here's Hegseth. Listen to this. The language is just shocking.
All countries need to translate goals into guns, commitments into capabilities, and pledges into power. That's all that matters, hard power. It's the only thing belligerents actually respect. Your continued investment and leadership are vital to helping Ukraine defend itself and to bring an end to this conflict. Peace through strength. Now, if this war does not end, if there is no path to peace in the short term, then the United States, along with our allies, will take the steps necessary to impose costs on Russia for its continued aggression. If we must take this step, the U.S. War Department stands ready to do our part in ways that only the United States can do. This is not a war that started on President Trump's watch, but it will end on his watch.
It may end on his watch, in a nuclear war will all end on Trump's watch with that type of rhetoric. So he's saying that peace through strength. What a ridiculous trope. This is straight out of one of Mussolini's speeches or a Hitler speech, peace through strength. And we'll end this in only the way that the U.S. can. What exactly does he mean there, Mike? How does the U.S. plan to end the conflict? If it's not diplomatically, militarily, how are they meant to do that against a nuclear superpower in the Russian Federation? I'm confused.
Nukes.
Well, yeah, basically. So by saying what he said, that only hard power can solve this and deal with belligerents, Pete Hegseth and the United States are then basically showing that they are the belligerents, because only belligerents speak like this in the international system and throughout history. So they can't erase millennia of military and political history and all of the lessons we've learned. Clearly, not everybody's learned them, but this all can't be erased just because Donald Trump appeared on the scene 9 or 10 months ago. So absolutely unbelievable. And then now this clip. Here's Mark Rutte, the empty suit from Brussels, and Pete Hegseth, the greasy-haired DOD head, former Fox News weekend host. Listen to this.
Firepower. That's what is coming. We expect it is coming from NATO. And it was a historic summit just a couple of months ago, brought about by leadership of President Trump to say we need our allies to step up. And they did, and they have in those commitments. Now those commitments will soon translate into capabilities, which is the most important aspect of it. And one part of that, of course, is Pearl, is the initiative where European countries buy U.S. weapons, transfer to NATO for the fight in Ukraine to bring peace to that conflict. And if there's anything we've learned under President Trump, is the active application of peace through strength. You get peace when you are strong, not when you use strong words or wag your finger. You get it when you have strong and real capabilities that adversaries respect.
So the guy talking there is a Army reservist or reservist who attained the highest rank of major, and he was a guard at Gitmo, and he's running the $1 trillion a year Pentagon. I mean, how did that happen? I'll tell you how that happened. Mary Madelson and Benjamin Netanyahu. That's how that happened. So let's just move on very quickly here. This is the Ukrainian leadership. Oh, we'll go back here. Ukraine delegations invited Raytheon and Lockheed, the manufacturers of the Tomahawk missile. And we'll go to, this is Andrei Yermak, Zelensky's brain, and he's tweeted out all the details of this. And of course, they put this snazzy social media video here. I'll spare the audience the
audio,
the dodgy Euro techno soundtrack, but it's pretty gaudy. Nonetheless, they're sort of really playing this one up, that the U.S. defense contractors over there pressing the palms with the Ukrainians on this. So it's all about the Tomahawk, hyping the next generation of wonder weapons that's going to supposedly turn the tide of the conflict here. But here's what broke today. This is important. Now, this is the Financial Times, and they're saying, what are the U.S. Tomahawk missiles Trump is considering for Ukraine? But there's some interesting details in this story. And this could also change the discussion right here. Ukrainian troops will not be trained to operate these Tomahawk missiles, according to a source talking to the FT. And they go on, U.S. contractors will operate Tomahawk missiles in Ukraine. Now, that violates the red line drawn by Putin just last week. So it's right there in the FT. So decent piece of journalism here, citing NATO military officials, and they're saying the missiles will complement what Ukraine has already achieved with drones. So, Mike, I think that the whole Tomahawk thing, it looks more like a sort of public relations campaign to keep people interested and supporting this disastrous, failing proxy war project in Ukraine. That's what it looks like. But over to you.
Okay, thank you, Patrick, for that. Now let's come back to the UK then. And MI5's National Protective Security Authority has issued new security guidance in order to protect democratic institutions from espionage and foreign interference. Those are the words. The guidance outlines how state-backed actors and their proxies attempt to manipulate, discredit, or secretly gather information on political figures at all levels. This is done through subtle and deceptive means that blur the line between engagement and malign activity. So that's what they say about it. Now, this is supposed to help MPs, House of Lords peers, councillors, parliamentary staff, candidates to understand the threats they face from foreign actors and take simple, effective steps to protect themselves, their teams, and the integrity of the UK's democracy.
They didn't mention normal people, though. Like, what about the dustmen, the milkmen, cashier workers? How do they protect themselves from disinformation and interference?
By watching the UK column, but that's another question. So, sorry, that's what they say. So let's translate what that meant. It means that you, the people that are on the receiving end of this, as politicians, candidates, and whatnot, can safely ignore the majority of opposition to your policies by writing it off as foreign interference. That's basically what that all means. Now, alongside this, of course, is the alleged Chinese spying scandal, as if China, Russia, Iran, Britain, United States, and the EU aren't spying at each other all the time. I mean, it is ridiculous. But anyway, Deputy National Security Advisor Matthew Collins said that China represents the biggest state-based threat to the country's economic security. Well, of course it does, because China's producing stuff and we're not. So of course it is in that sense, but anyway, not quite in the sense he meant. Starmer ordered the publication of the witness statements. This is after Wednesday's Prime Minister questions, when Kemi Badenoch accused him of covering up why the case against two alleged spies collapsed. The Crown Prosecution Service it's claimed that they dropped the case after deciding the evidence did not show that China was a national security threat. Well, maybe the CPS was dropping the case in a similar way that they dropped a case against Savile. I don't know. I mean, that may be completely wrong. But anyway, coming back to the...
Sometimes these cases get lost.
Well, indeed.
Yes.
Coming back to the MI5 advice, the question, it covers things like what should you look out for? And they talk about elicitation, cultivation, blackmail, online approaches, financial donations, cyber compromises, and so on. But the best is disinformation, because the example they cite is one that Patrick and I covered at the time in 2022. Let's just remind ourselves.
Who can forget? This was just a classic moment.
Play it.
Good afternoon, this is Defence Secretary's office. Can I just check who you've got on the line, please?
Yes, sure. We are on the line. Do you hear me?
Thank you. Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear. If
yeah.
you just bear with us while the Defence Secretary joins.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, we will switch on our camera when we will see.
Understood. No problem. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello. How are you there?
I'm fine. I'm in Poland.
Oh, okay. Yes, I know. So, dear Secretary,
It's my pleasure. I've visited you 5 times over the last 5 years, so I'm determined to keep more and more supplies coming to you. I can't say where I've been, but I've just been to look at more of our anti-air capacity to give you and making sure that we are getting it into the country as quickly as possible.
So you know that Russia demands to leave ideas of NATO joining.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
Because I don't think Russia should be able to demand anything other than going home.
Yeah, of course, I know that.
Two things. I've just been looking at our new anti-air missile that we're sending you, which is better than Stinger. It'll work at night. It's a very, very fast missile, and it will help close the skies to Russian aircraft.
Yes.
I think.
Now, just in case you're not sure what that was Vovan and Alexis, the Russian pranksters, who absolutely got the then Defense Secretary Ben Wallace. And the thing was, in the course of that, if you watch the whole thing, in the course of that, he hemorrhaged intelligence information to effectively. And the thing is, that was not disinformation. That was Ben Wallace telling it as it was. So I understand why MI5 might be suggesting people you don't want to get caught out by Vovan and Lexus, but it still happens. And I think Samantha Power was just done a few weeks ago. So, you know.
If ITV did it, it wouldn't be disinformation. If Channel 4 did it, it wouldn't be disinformation. If it was Graham Norton doing it for the BBC, it would be fine. But because the Russians did it, Mike, it's suddenly disinformation. But they're very clear and transparent about what their role is as pranksters. I will argue, lastly, Mike, that Vovan and Lexus is one of the most lethal weapons in Russia's arsenal.
Quite possibly. Well, look, we got to leave it there for today. I'm going to say thank you very much to Mark and to Basil Valentine for joining us, and to you, of course, Patrick. We've got a little bit to discuss in extra, including Ron Paul and what he's been doing recently. But let's leave it for a few minutes. If you're a UK column member, join us for that. Otherwise, we will see you again on Monday. I hope you have a great time if you come and join us in New York or on the live stream. And you'll be in London at the Digital ID thing, perhaps.
Yeah, we'll see. That should be a good event as well.
And we'll see you Monday. See you then. Bye-bye.